Catholic Moments, Episode 83. Kitty Cleveland and Kevin Vost.
Hello, I'm Sean McGahey, host of the Catholic New Media Roundup at CatholicRoundup.com. You're listening to Lisa Hendy, host of the Catholic Moments podcast, and Eric's mom.
Blooming, finding joy in the journey and hope in the heaven yet to come. Blooming.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Moments. And now, here's your host and my mom, Lisa Hendy.
Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you as well to Sean, host of the Catholic New Media Roundup and also host of this Advent's wonderful interactive Advent calendar featuring many of your favorite Catholic New Media personalities sharing their thoughts and their talents during the days leading up to the Christmas celebration. So we'll have links to that in the show notes, and I want to thank you, Sean, for taking the time to record that intro for me. And welcome everyone to another episode of Catholic Moments, the show from CatholicMom.com, where we talk about all things faith, family, and fun from a Catholic perspective. And as usual, on this week's show, we've got two great interviews to share with you. The first with Dr. Kevin Vost, who is a Catholic psychologist and author of two fascinating books, one of which we'll be discussing in the interview today. And also Catholic recording artist Kitty Cleveland, sharing some of her music as we lead up to the holiday season and sharing about some of the great new work that she's put out on her recent CD. I know you're going to enjoy that as well. Let's sit back first of all, though, and listen to this week's Catholic Deacon Moment from Deacon Tom Fox.
In a recent homily at our parish, I spoke to the morning Mass attendees, saying that next year we should all go together and have custom t-shirts prepared for us to wear. The shirts would have this message: Advent, Mary is the reason for the season. That sounds odd when people suggest that Jesus is the reason for the season. And yes, Jesus is the reason for everything, every word, every facet of creation. Jesus is certainly the reason for Christmas and the Incarnation, and at the holy name of Jesus every knee shall bend. But about his mother, we know she was pregnant and was the first ever participant in Advent. This centrality of Mary in Advent was especially noted by our late Holy Father, John Paul II. It was also recognized by a Jesuit priest who painted a beautiful, iconic picture of Our Lady of the New Advent. It shows Jesus inside of Mary as he blesses us from her womb. We Catholics lift our eyes toward our Mother when we hear or sing the Ave Maria. We know there are beautiful prayers in our Catholic tradition. One is the Litany of the Blessed Virgin. It honors and asks her intercession under titles such as the Seat of Wisdom, Ark of the Covenant, Morning Star, and many other titles. Calling Mary the Seat of Wisdom comes from Mary's fiat: be it done to me according to your word. Her womb and her life were host and sustenance to the Son of God made man. God's holy wisdom was a physical part of her body, and Mary demonstrated obedient wisdom by agreeing to God's plan for salvation. In the book of Exodus, there is a description of the Ark of the Covenant. It was a symbol of God present to the people, the chosen people. The Ark contained the commandments, God's way of life for his people. Mary then is the Ark of the New Covenant, hosting Jesus in her holy body. Jesus is the new covenant between God and man. Did you know that the planet Venus is referred to as the morning star? Venus appears in the eastern sky just before or at the rising of the sun. Mary's title of the morning star honors the coming of Jesus Christ, the Son of a new day, the dawning of the day of redemption. In the days remaining in Advent, turn to Mary, pull out your rosary and speak. Just speak simply to her as you would a loving mother. Tell her you recognize she is truly Our Lady of the New Advent, the one who will help give birth to her Son in the manger of your heart. Advent blessings. This is Deacon Tom.
Well, thank you, Deacon Tom, not only for another wonderful reflection, but also for sharing such a beautiful image of Our Lady of the New Advent. And if you head over to CatholicMom.com and look up this particular podcast post, I'll be sure to put down there for you the lovely image that Deacon Tom has shared with me to give to all of you to help us contemplate Our Lady during these last few days of Advent as we lead up to Christmas. It's truly a beautiful icon, and I can't wait to have you take a peek at it and enjoy it as I've enjoyed it for the last few days since he sent it to me. And I want to thank my favorite online deacon, Deacon Tom Fox, not only for this reflection, but just for so many words of wisdom during the last year. I have grown so much through the reflections that you've shared with me, and I think you've inspired so many people this year, and I want to thank you for so generously sharing your spirit and the depths of your soul with us. You can always visit Deacon Tom Fox at his website at www.deacontomonline.com. And next up, I hope you'll enjoy my interview with Catholic author and psychologist, Dr. Kevin Vost. Our guest on today's episode of Catholic Moments is Catholic psychologist and author Kevin Vost. How are you today, Dr. Kevin Vost?
I'm doing just fine, Lisa. How are you?
I'm terrific. I'm so happy to have you on to talk about your book, Memorize the Faith. I know you have a couple of books out and have a lot of great work that you're working on, but we're going to focus today on Memorize the Faith. And before we get into all the wonderful nuggets of that particular book, I'd like to have you just briefly introduce yourself and your family for our listening audience.
Okay, sure. I'm Kevin Vost. I work by day involved with Social Security disability cases, mental and physical disability claims. I've been doing that since my early 20s. In the meanwhile, a few decades back, I went back and got a doctorate in clinical psychology. So I did university teaching on the side for about 13 years. Now I write books on the side for Sophia Institute Press, one of our great Catholic publishers. I have a family, my wife, Kathy. We've been married for 24 years. I have two sons, ages 22 and 16, so I have lots of things to keep me busy.
You do, and I'm so curious about what brought up the topic of writing this particular book. The full title of it, Memorize the Faith, and almost anything else, using the methods of the great Catholic medieval memory masters. I love the title, and I love the topic. How did this particular book come up?
Okay, great question. That title is quite a mouthful, I know. The interesting thing about this particular book, I was a born Catholic grade school, high school, 1 year of a Catholic college, but I consider myself a revert. I spent most of my 20s and 30s into the early 40s outside of the church by kind of reading some bad philosophy and being pulled away. But during that time, as I did my studying in psychology, obtained a master's degree and a doctorate, I came across some writings of St. Thomas Aquinas while I did research on the history of memory techniques and memory strategies, how to improve your memory. St. Thomas Aquinas and also St. Albert the Great, two of our great Catholic theologians and doctors of the Church, were very well versed in all sorts of topics, and they both wrote about these memory techniques. So when I was outside the Church, I came across this, I realized this. Then later, in my early 40s, partially through the writings of St. Thomas, when I came back into the Church, this came back into my mind, and I thought, well, maybe this is something I can do for the Church now. Use this information I developed when I was on the outside and do some good for Christians and Catholics.
It's such a wonderful gift to be able to go to the resources that we have within our faith, but a lot of what's involved is actually knowing those and making them part of your day-to-day life. I was sharing with you that I have friends that I do Bible study with who are evangelical Christians, and they're so easily able to pull from memory different Bible verses and prayers that seem applicable to different situations. And I know our Catholic faith is just absolutely filled with these treasures that sometimes, because we don't necessarily know them that well, we don't think to access them. Now, tell us some of the items that are actually covered in the book. Share with the reader some of what they'll learn to memorize using this book.
Sure. The book Memorize the Faith is kind of what I call a guided and illustrated tutorial. It gives you the history and background to these memory techniques that actually go back over 2,000 years. It also shows you step-by-step how to apply them with concrete materials, such as the 10 Commandments, the 7 capital sins, the cardinal virtues and the theological virtues, the Beatitudes, the mysteries of the Rosary, all of the books of the Old Testament, all of the books of the New Testament, and on and on and on, the Stations of the Cross, the 12 Apostles. There's just maybe 20 or 30 different sets of information in the book that shows you step by step how to memorize these things in their exact order. So, for example, when you memorize the books of the Old Testament, you'll know every single one in the exact order, both forwards and backwards.
Now, for someone like me who's not a memory master, and I'll admit that up front, is this something that anyone can do, this system that you've developed, or the techniques that you're recommending in the book?
Okay, I'll say almost. I have, testimonials, both people who talk to me personally and letters that have come into the publisher. I think our age range now goes from about 5 years of age, of course with parental help,
right,
up to well into the 80s. One of my neighbors who was in the 70s and 80s range told me, she said, Kevin, I read your book the other day, and I really enjoyed it, but I thought it was a little bit too hard for me. She said, but then I woke up in the middle of the night that next night, and I realized, well, I know the Ten Commandments in their order, and I know the sins, and I know the virtues. So I've had a lot of, good feedback on people being able to use the system. Basically, you have to be, old enough. It's really ideal for school, maybe middle-aged children are about their peak for applying these techniques. And after that, as long as a person is healthy, hasn't developed a dementing illness or anything, this can be applied, late into the life, well into the last decades.
One of the things that I love about the book as well is how approachable it is, because I have to say that before I actually physically got to look at it, I was reading, about it online, and, you hear Thomas Aquinas or some of these other great minds of the church, and you think, uh-oh, this is going to be very heady material. And then the way that you've presented and pulled together the book is so accessible with the illustrations and the system as it's laid out. And was that a design that you did intentionally?
Yes, I did try to make it as crystal clear as possible. And in fact, that was one of the neat things that St. Thomas did with this technique. He did not invent it. It goes back to the ancient Greeks, Simonides, about the 5th century B.C. But one of the nice things that Thomas did in the Summa Theologica, he just kind of boiled it down to 4 simple steps. He says there's 4 main things we do if we want to perfect our memories. Mm-hmm. And really 2 we already know. Okay, and they are, we concentrate. We know to memorize something, we have to concentrate, pay close attention. We have to use repetition. We have to rehearse and repeat. Okay, those are 2 steps we all know. Then he says there's 2 main steps that you add on top of that to perfect your memory. You have to develop a system of using images, forming mental pictures of things that you want to remember. And he shows techniques even for taking abstract concepts and turning them into simple things you can picture. And the last step is you need to organize what you're trying to remember. You need to form some kind of a system that lines things up one after the other. So in Memorize the Faith, I just go through all 4 of those points, and you'll find an image for every concept we try to remember, and it all goes in a specific location. In fact, in Memorize the Faith, the organizing principle is 60 locations within a house. There are 6 rooms, and they average 10 locations per room. Mm-hmm. And once you memorize these locations, you can use them again and again and again for whatever information you desire to remember. So these locations, this organizing system, becomes like a notebook inside of your head, which you can reuse for all kinds of different sets of information over time.
It's absolutely fascinating, and I'm sitting here looking at the book as you're describing it, and I just really am so excited to share this with my 2 sons who are... They're 14 and 17 and in the throes of doing a lot of studying these days. So I'd love to hear as a parent how you would talk with other parents about how they might use your system and the things that you've suggested in the book with their own families.
Yeah, sure. Of course, the younger the children, the more explicit help they're going to need. But this basic concept, this basic technique that's shown in the book, the system of the locations that you memorize, the mm-hmm. system of applying images. Once you know those locations and once you understand how to create images, they can be used for virtually anything. For example, the first practical chapter of the book, we cover the 10 Commandments. And you learn 10 specific locations within a normal entranceway to the house, like the front door, the doormat, a window facing outside, a picture on the wall. You learn 10 of these. And we place images for each of the 10 Commandments there. Okay? Once you learn those 10 locations, then later on, you can place the first 10 U.S. presidents there if you want to. You can place 10 states with their state capitals there. whatever it is you want to remember, you can use those same locations again and again and again.
I'm curious to hear what you, as a psychologist, think about the impact of the crazy technological assistance that we have. I wonder sometimes if memorization is a lost art because we have such ready access to information, and the fact that we can just hop on the internet or on our iPhones or whatever and look things up so quickly. Do you see trend in people memorizing less nowadays?
Yes, I think that's correct. And it's interesting, even St. Thomas even kind of touched on this topic way back when in his day. He talked about kind of sort of a vice of curiosity where we're seeking out information from all over the place and it's all superficial, versus a virtue of studiousness where we can focus our attention on some very important things. So the internet, if we're not careful, it can lead us to that curiosity. Where we're looking at so much we don't absorb any of it deeply. So memorization, in that sense, may be a lost art. It's something that's worth kind of rebuilding in ourselves, is the capacity, when we find all these wonderful things, when we find the things that are really worth knowing, to be able to train ourselves to focus on them, to study them, to memorize them. Maybe it is becoming a lost skill, but it's certainly one that we can recover.
Oh, I definitely think so. And just as we want to take quiet time every day for prayer, to take time to mentally discipline ourselves, and with one of the 4 key components being concentration. I know we frequently in our home, I fall victim to the multitasking, and I'm doing laundry and listening to my iPod and talking to my children all at the same time and things. So that mental discipline is just such an important part of this. Now, Kevin, I know that you have a wonderful website over at drvost.com, and that's drvost.com. What are some of the services that readers of your website can take advantage of over there at drvost.com?
Okay, sure. At drvost.com, I provide information on both of my books published so far, Memorize the Faith and also Fit for Eternal Life, a book on physical and spiritual fitness. One of my other areas of expertise is fitness and nutrition. Also on that website, you can learn about those activities. I have a forum section where I answer people's questions. Our listeners might want to go in and take a look and see the kind of questions that I've been asked since this has been up the last year. Because they're all over I'll cover all kinds of topics in fitness and also in the practical application of these memory techniques. So people are just invited to go in there and look around, and as new books come up, they're in there, or if I have speaking engagements and so forth, those are also noted there. So I welcome people to take a look at drvost.com. And feel free to ask me a question through the forum section.
And I know that you are available to come out and to speak with groups and parishes and organizations about some of the topics that you write on, so people can email you directly if they'd like to have you out for a speaker.
Yeah, they can sure do that too. And if they'd like, they can just do kevin@drvost.com. And to directly email me, that would be just fine.
Great.
I'd love to do it.
Well, we're going to have all these links on our show notes. Everywhere where you listen to the Catholic Moments podcast, you'll be able to check out drvost.com and all the information about Kevin's great books. And I know that you have an upcoming appearance on one of my favorite shows next week. On December 16th, you're going to be on the Catholics Next Door on XM and Sirius Radio with the Willitzes. So everybody head over and check out Kevin's interview there. He'll have much more time than what we have today. And also the good news that you're going to be featured on 2 of Jonette Benkovic's upcoming television shows featuring both of your books as well. And people can find that information through your website, right? When those will be airing?
That's right. Once I find the final date, I'll let folks know. It should be sometime in February or March.
Well, I am definitely going to hopefully have you back on the show after New Year's, because I'm very interested in the other book that you've written as well. And just to let people know about that one, I hope that we don't wait until after Christmas to be concerned with our physical health. Dr. Kevin Vost also has a book called Fit for Eternal Life, and it's a wonderful book, a Christian approach to working out, eating right, and building the virtues of fitness in your soul. So I would love to have you back on if you'll come on to discuss that book as well, because I know I'm going to need some help in the new year on this topic.
I would be delighted, Lisa.
Great. Are there any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you get back to work?
Okay, I guess just really in brief, I'd like us to think of our minds and bodies as gifts from God, and gifts that we have the capacity to improve and perfect us to some extent. It's definitely worthwhile trying to do that, to make the most of our minds and bodies, and to turn ourselves into kind of what I call dynamos for charity, that we can then take these improved selves and go out there and do some good with them.
I love it. Our guest has been Dr. Kevin Vost, and you can check out his book, Memorize the Faith, at CatholicMoments.com or at drvost.com. Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, you're welcome.
Boy, I really enjoyed that interview with Kevin Vost, and I'm definitely going to have him on again in the new year to speak about his other book that we just barely mentioned during the course of the interview. But in the meantime, I hope you'll check out Kevin's website and his books as well. And next up, I'm so happy to share with you my interview with Kitty Cleveland, who is just an incomparable Catholic recording artist, winner of several awards, and just a fabulous singer and an even more fabulous wife and woman and mom. And I'm just thrilled to share this interview with you. Leading up to the interview, I'm going to play you a portion of one of her songs, God Alone Is Enough. And I want you to know, Kitty, that this song has really touched my life in the last few weeks since I've been listening to it with some health issues that I have going on. And I just want to thank you for the gift of so many songs and for the time that you shared with me this week during our conversation. So here is Kitty Cleveland, and I hope you enjoy the song and our interview.
Let nothing trouble you, and let nothing frighten you, for everything passes, but God will never change. Patient endurance will obtain everything. Whoever has God wants for nothing at all. God alone is enough. God alone is enough. Whoever has God wants for nothing at all.
Our guest on today's episode of Catholic Moments is the very talented and super inspirational Catholic recording artist, Kitty Cleveland. Hi, Kitty. How are you today?
Hi, Lisa. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm terrific. I'm so thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you because I've been a fan of your music and the work that you do for such a long time. I'm sort of a Catholic music groupie, and when you say the word Catholic music, you think of Kitty Cleveland. So
Small world.
it's a big treat for me to be able to have this conversation with you today and to share the good news about the project that you're just recently releasing, your new CD, Sublime Chant. But before we start talking about that, I'd love for you to just kind of briefly tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you came to this point in your Catholic music ministry.
Well, there has not really been a plan. I have to say that pretty much the way all of my CDs have happened, this is number 7, is that people start asking me for the same thing over and over again, kind of insistently, and that's how pretty much every project has happened.
Mm-hmm.
The last CD I did, Be Not Afraid, was really a response to my father's death. It's a lot of the songs that we sang while he was dying and sang that at his funeral. And I just wanted to have a CD of music that was healing and consoling, because they're the songs I wished I'd had recorded for my dad that I could have played for him when I couldn't be at his bedside. So, life circumstances happen. But with this last CD, the Sublime Chant, I'm a child of the 80s, and so chant was really out of my realm of expertise.
Right.
And so, but people kept asking me for it and saying, especially since the Holy Father is such a fan of Gregorian chant, and they wanted to teach it to their children. And I thought, and I have a 4-year-old, and I'd like to teach it to her as well. So I was talking to Joe Hand, who had produced my the Be Not Afraid CD,
Mm-hmm.
and I was telling him about this, and I said, I just can't see myself singing Gregorian chant in a studio. I just need someplace that's going to be inspiring and beautiful. And in the meantime, a friend of mine from Scotland asked if I would come sing for her wedding out in the Scottish countryside at this castle, and
oh my gosh, what a wonderful
I know.
invitation. I'm sure that didn't take very long to answer.
Well, actually, at first I said no. I said, I've got at the time a 3-year-old, and I'd have to be gone for probably a week and a half, and I just didn't see how it could happen. But then I started putting the two together, and I thought, well, I bet there's some really beautiful cathedrals in Scotland where I might be able to record. So I did some research on that, and ended up accepting the invitation to the wedding, and brought my mother and my daughter and went to Scotland. I think we were there for 10 days.
Oh, what a blessing.
It was, and I actually lived in Scotland for a year, my junior year in college at the University of Edinburgh, so it was great to go back, and we found the cathedral I ended up recording in. It was a Dunblane Cathedral from the 13th century, and it was just a stunning locale, I'm sure you can imagine.
Oh, I can't, yeah.
Fantastic acoustics. And so what I did, I'm used to recording in a studio with an engineer and producer and all these people who are listening and giving me feedback, but in this instance, I brought my own recording equipment with me and literally just prayed that the Lord would provide the opportunity and the place, because I, being a rather spontaneous person, had not really arranged for all the details before I left for Scotland. So I was actually in the country and still didn't know where I was going to record. But I went to the cathedral, and this delightful gentleman ended up giving me the keys to the cathedral, these like 10-inch long
oh my gosh,
iron keys, and locked me in and gave me a set of keys. And so I had the cathedral to myself, because it's a big tourist attraction. But so it was quiet while I was able to record. But I didn't have any pitch reference, so that was another challenge. But God, it's truly a miraculous project, because I didn't know any of the chant. I didn't know the translations before then, and wasn't real familiar with the tunes. So what I would do is I'd listen to them on headphones, do it like a choir of monks chanting the song on headphones, and then I put that down, and then I'd turn on my recorder, and then I'd sing it. And so I'd do several takes that way. And
oh my goodness. Now, was your mother there with you, or were you absolutely in this cathedral by yourself?
I was totally alone.
Oh my gosh. So you had no idea what you were getting in terms of footage or
Right.
anything. Nobody to say, that was great, or gee, honey, that might be a little better if you did it again.
Yeah,
Wow.
Nothing. And it was just so foreign to me. But and I ended up, when I got back to the States, Joe Hand did some vocal editing for me, and then David Smith in Indiana added really beautiful arrangements. And so it's a kind of a different project in that usually when you hear Gregorian chant, it's usually a choir of men, and this time it's just one woman, and usually it's not accompanied with anything, but I really wanted it to have kind of a like an atmospheric, almost haunting kind of a sound behind it, to give the chord structure, especially since I was by myself. It wasn't interesting, just my lone voice. So I think that added so much to it, and the feedback I'm getting has been so surprising to me, but again, all glory to God, because it's just a miracle that this thing came together. And but people are telling me, and really it's very humbling, that this is their favorite of all of the CDs that I've done. And it's humbling because it's not my music. This is part of the patrimony of the church that has
and
just
so timeless. I think it
spiritual
has.
resonance.
Yeah, I think it has so much. That's it. That there are so many memories that come with listening to it, and those moments that you feel when you hear the different chants. Our listeners are going to get the treat of hearing one of the chants, O Salutaris Hostia, at the end of our interview, so you guys can look forward to that. But I want them to know that the CD is now available, right? You've just recently launched it?
Yes, I had my CD release concert on Friday, December 12th, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and they can listen to clips of all of the songs on my website.
Terrific! It's such a great project, and again, a little bit of a departure from what you've done in the past. I'm wishing you'd had a video camera there with you too, because I bet you would have had some really beautiful footage, and that you might have to go back and.
I think that's a great idea.
Let me know if you need a Catholic mom to come along and carry your suitcases. I'll volunteer for that duty, and I can probably bring the video camera too.
Job is yours, Lisa.
Anyway, so I guess one of the questions that I have, because so many of our listeners are parents, is how you manage, to keep up a very active ministry. I see you travel a lot, and I know you're very busy, and you're a mom as well. How are those two blending in your own life?
Well, I try not to travel more than once a month. And, for example, I had to go to Phoenix a few weeks ago, and I flew out the day of my concert, which is always hard to do, but, it would mean that I could drop my daughter at school that morning, and I don't homeschool, which of course if I homeschooled, it would probably be impossible. But anyway, I was able to bring her to school, drive to the airport, fly to Phoenix, do the concert, and I flew home the next day.
Wow.
So it's just gone one night, and it's a little grueling, but it's much easier on my husband and on my daughter. I just have one child, and for me to make it as short as I can. This last trip I did was 4 days, and that was really hard. My mom came with me. I generally like to travel with an assistant, usually my mom or my husband. But I'm going to Boston in the spring for 4 different concerts, and the Boston area anyway. And so my husband's already taking off of work, and I'm going to bring my daughter with me, and that way, we don't have to be apart. So, but it's hard.
Does she understand what Mommy does for a living and
well,
how special that is?
Seen it. I don't know that she appreciates that it's special at all. In fact, she doesn't allow me to sing while she's singing. It's all about her. So,
well, as it should be.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, in the car, not allowed to sing a note. But anyway, she definitely knows what I do, and has actually she's adopted from China. My daughter is, but she's got wonderful musical talent and sings right on pitch. My husband's a musician as well, so we're really thrilled with that.
Oh, that's great. Maybe we'll get to hear her on an upcoming project.
Well, people keep asking for a children's CD, so that's probably I'll record her on that.
Well, I'd say since I have moms contacting me all the time looking for great Catholic music for their kids, that I'd put in an order for that project.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm getting the message for my next CD. Several people have asked me for that recently. Yeah.
Well, add it to the list, and I know that you've got an exciting event coming up in January. You're going to be appearing with Immaculée, right?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that event.
She is just so phenomenal. I'm sure many of your listeners have read Left to Tell that she wrote about surviving the Rwandan Holocaust. And I met her a couple of summers ago in Atlanta, but I've never worked with her. And I was asked to sing with her the Magnificat, and she's going to sing it in her native tongue, and I'll sing it in my native tongue, which is English. So that is going to be in Natchez, Mississippi in January. And, I forget the exact dates. I want to say it's like the 19th or something.
I know it's on your website, and I do want to remind everybody that you can visit Kitty at any time at kittycleveland.com, and we'll have that link in our web notes as well, wherever you're listening to the show. But that sounds like a wonderful opportunity to see 2 very special people ministering together.
Well, definitely her. And on Saturday, I'll be giving my testimony, and then Immaculée will be telling her story. And really, both of us have stories of forgiveness, though I feel like hers is just so incredibly profound, and I'm deeply humbled that I would be considered in the same company. But yeah, I'm very excited about it.
I'm sure that'll be a blessing for everybody to be able to be there. Kitty, are there any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you get back to your work and your family?
Well, I guess that I am available for speaking engagements and for doing concerts. My preference is always speaking engagements, and then I weave in songs that kind of drive home the theme on lots of different topics, but usually it's my testimony, and then I kind of emphasize a particular aspect of it depending upon the venue. So it could be Eucharistic adoration, which is a great love for me, or the Divine Mercy. I have a pro-life rosary that I did with a priest friend of mine. So that I've done that at pro-life conferences, and I love to do it. And I do have a booking agency, and contact for that information is on the website as well. CMG booking. But I especially love talking to moms.
Yeah, and there's such a need out there for us to all be lifted up by people like you who, you're out there doing all these great things, but you're a mom as well, and you're leading the day-to-day frustrations that come with trying to balance everything and keep an active prayer life and nurture yourself spiritually. So I'm sure that would be a good buoy to our moms out there who need inspiration in their lives. Well, I want everybody to go over and to visit Kitty at her website. Again, it's kittycleveland.com, and the latest CD, Sublime Chant, the Scotland Project, is now available through her website, and I know you guys are going to enjoy it as well. And Kitty, I want to thank you for the gift of your music and just for all the inspiration that you've shared with so many people like me who you'll never meet, but who have just, grown so much in their faith from listening to you.
God is good. Thank you, Lisa. And you're coming with me to Scotland.
All right.
Trip, so, yeah, we'll meet.
Sounds great. Well, you have a great day, Kitty.
Thanks. You too. God bless you.
As we close out today's episode of the Catholic Moments podcast, I want to invite you to head over to CatholicMom.com to check out the links for all of the items that we talked about in today's show, including the websites of Dr. Kevin Vost and Kitty Cleveland. And thanks again to both of you for your participation on today's show and for sharing the gifts of your faith and your talents with so many of us who benefit from your work. I want to also remind you to head over to CatholicMom.com to check out this week's contest, your chance to win a beautiful crystal wrap rosary bracelet made of Swarovski crystals, and to check out every Sunday the new contests. We're posting contests each and every week now, so you have all week long to head over, and all you have to do to enter is leave a little comment with a valid email address for us, and you'll be entered to win. So if you missed this week's contest, be sure to head over to CatholicMom.com, because there's surely another one right there waiting for you. And I, as always, will invite your feedback. I'd love to be your friend on Facebook, Twitter, or Plurk if you want to follow me there and see what's happening over at CatholicMom.com. Drop me an email to lisa@CatholicMom.com, or just visit us anytime or call our voice feedback line at 206-339-9272. I absolutely love hearing from you guys. I'm not sure if there's going to be an episode next week. It's Christmas Eve, and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to take next Wednesday off or not. I'm sure that you guys will be busy with family and friends, and so if I do not speak with you until the week after that, I wish you a blessed last week of Advent and a wonderful Christmas season. And our closing prayer for this week will be the beautiful song O Salutaris Hostia, as performed by Kitty Cleveland. Have a blessed week, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Salutaris hostia, qui cili pandis hostium, bella primundo hostilia, da robur fero auxilium, unitrinoque Domino, sit sempiterna gloria, qui vitam sine termino, nobis donet in patria.
SQPN, leading the way in Catholic New Media.